Hello, I'm Jerry Notable. I'm a customer service manager at Sioux Automation Center in Sioux Center, Iowa. I'm going to spend a little time with you on a 61 series wagons. We've had customers call about this or that on maintenance and so on. So we thought we'd run through the wagon with you and show some of the key components that need to be maintained regularly. We'll start off with in the front here with a PTO. This PTO is a constant velocity PTO. It's got two knuckles in it, and it's show you some key parts of it of what need to be maintained. The PTOs that we have are splines. We have spline female, males, and we got a lot of drive surface in there. But in order to really maintain your CV, it's best to take the shield off. Take a screwdriver. There's this little red clip right down here. You push that in, and then you get in here and push this plastic sleeve over. The easiest way to maintain your CV is to take it out of the shield, because you can get at all the grease zerks a lot better, and also it gives you an opportunity to see how your spline shaft is doing on your PTO, where it slides in and out. You want to make sure that that stays lubricated really well, and this way you could take a tube of grease or whatever and slop it up good, and then before you put it back in, so that your splines don't run dry on each other, because what it'll do, it'll just wear them out really fast, and then it starts really pulling hard. Then you'll start pulling the shafts out of bearings and whatnot on the drive line going to the back of the wagon. So getting the shaft greased, well, then we have the CV, the greasing of the CV joints. Okay, we got one right down here on the front cross that greases this cross that goes onto the tractor. Then we got a zerk. This is on a used wagon. Right here, there's supposed to be a zerk right down there to grease the center plates in the inside. Then we got the zerk on the back cross here. That's the third one. And then there's one more that's really critical, and that's this one that's in the end of the looks like it's greasing this cross, but it's actually not. What it does is it pumps grease in here, it travels around here and goes down to the center pin in the CV, which is really important. That's what holds your CV together, and that it don't fly all over the place. Because we've had them that guys didn't do it, and they run dry. Then the ball that sits in the end of here starts wearing that hole out, and once it wears it out a little bit, then you really get a vibration, and the thing's really hopping really bad. So you want to make sure that this one gets greased. And when you grease it, have your PTO straight. Don't have it like this. It's got to be straight, because if you go like this, it pumps too much grease in there, and you can't get it to go straight again, because the whole journal is full of grease. Then you'd have to take this grease zerk back out and then push it over and push the grease back out again, because there was too much in there. So make sure that you got the PTO lined up, and then pump her full of grease. And yeah, you feel it when it's getting in there, because your grease gun will start to pump a little harder, and then give it a few pumps, and you can't overgrease it, because all it'll do is just come back out in the inside. So it's a key part of the PTO to start out. All right, other maintenance on the wagon is greasing it. In the front here, we got 3 bearings. We got 2 ball bearings up here in the front, and we have the real bearing right down here, which is a plastic bearing. Okay, when you grease the wagon, whether you're hitting the ball bearings or the real bearings or whatever, make sure that just let the wagon run at an idle, so that, especially critical for the ones on the reel, because when you're pumping grease in there, it can go around as the shaft's going around, it's getting the whole shaft lubricated, instead of just pushing grease in and coming out the easiest spot, because grease will go the path of the least resistance. So you want to have it turning while you're mixing it, while you're servicing it. On the discharge, this is a 4 auger discharge on this wagon. For maintaining on this, key point are these zerks right at the bottom. Each auger has zerks in it, and what there is, there's a sleeve in there with 2 brass bushings. So if you don't grease it, those brass bushings are going to run dry. So along with the rest of the wagon, give them a couple, 3, 4 pumps on each of them, so that you don't wear them bushings out. Because what happens is these augers are 3 foot long, and you start getting a little bit of wear in there. Pretty soon your auger starts picking up, and then you get roughage or something in there, and it'll want to slug the augers because it's getting underneath there, and it can't pull it. So, and then there's on the back end here also, check your chains and so, that you squirt them with some oil and so. And there's tighteners on the back side here, plastic tighteners that are pulled on with springs. Just make sure that they are loose, that you can move them like this. This one here is the new discharge that's going on this used wagon. But you want to make sure that, and then you can check your sprockets to see how your teeth are on your sprockets and everything. Do that, because we get a lot of wagons in that these things are just drier than dry because nobody ever put any oil on them, and that's really hard on them chains. And they turn pretty fast too, because with the hydraulics and so now on tractors, they got a pretty good speed on spinning on them. So want to make sure that you shoot some oil on these chains also. On the drive part of the wagon, we've got bearings in the drive line running underneath here. And we got a chain coupler right down here that ties the input shaft to the shaft going into the oil bath. Even this here, you could slop some grease on it or oil it up, because even though it doesn't turn past another sprocket, it's still driving, and so any lubrication will make the chain last longer. We go into the on the wheels here. We'll cover the wheels here while we're at it a minute. Make sure that you check your lug nuts regularly. It's a key thing. We've had guys that even that you thought they were tight, and they were tight for a couple months, and sure as the dickens, they work loose for whatever reason, and it end up ruining the hub. So it don't take much to do it. Every week, 2 weeks, something like that. Just put a wrench on there, put a socket on there, and just give them a little bit and make sure that they stay tight all the time. The hubs are expensive. It don't take that much time to check them. In the oil bath here, that's what we call the back end, where we have a spring. If you ever call, we'll talk about the oil bath. It's in the back of the wagon. This wagon, the way it's driven, it's got an input chain in the bottom. Input shaft with an input chain that comes to a jack shaft here, which is a double sprocket on this shaft. The small sprocket drives the top auger. Then it drives from the top auger to the bottom auger, and then from the bottom auger to drive the reel. Everything is set up teeth-wise and everything so that minimal amount of horsepower and everything, and that everything turns at the correct RPM. As far as putting oil in the wagon, you want to have the oil up to the chain, the input chain in the bottom. That way, when it's running, it'll fling the oil up, and the rest of the oil gets everywhere else. As you can see on these chains, and so there's grease that has been on them, and so with your tighteners, you want to tighten your chains so that you get the slack out of them. They don't have to be really tight. You just want to have the slack out of them. So you just take the lock nuts loose on the turnbuckles, and it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and then just tighten up the turnbuckle enough to take the slack out. And then you might want to, after you do that, you check them, you might want to take, when you have a load on, open up the back door and just watch how they're running. If it looks like they're loose, being there's all the torque on it and everything with a load, then you could probably snug them up just a little bit more so that they're really just where they need to be when you're under a full load. The you can change the oil, whatever, you know. All you're doing is lubricating the chains into it. I know that there's guys that they use old oil or whatever. You don't want to run them dry. Any kind of oil in there would be good, just to keep everything lubricated. Just to touch again, the real sprocket right down here, it's got a big plastic bearing in the back here. So you want to make sure that that is turning while you're doing it, so that it gets, and I would say that the brass or the plastic bushing in there is about this wide. So there's a lot of surface area that it needs to cover. So the more you just leave it turn while you're pumping, and there again, you can't over grease it. All it'll do is it'll drop in the oil bath here, and no big deal. So you want to make sure that you get that greased very well. So with that, that's pretty much what's on the 61 series. If you have any questions, you can contact us at Sioux Automation. You can look on our website and go to the service line, and if you open up the service line, click on the manuals. If you lose your manual or something, all of our manuals are updated in there all the time, and you can go right click on the number of your wagon, and the manual will come up, and you can scroll through. You can even look at parts and whatever, so when you call the parts department, that you can give them the part number and everything of what you need. So hoping that this video has been helpful for you, and that it answers some questions for you that you don't have to call. But like I said, if you got anything, we're glad to help you anytime.